Oli and Clara for having us here to have this conversation on reflection on high-level political forum that is 2021. I wish to welcome all to this closing civil society session of the high-level political forum. And we are really glad to see so many of you with us again. And throughout the high-level political forum, we've had collectively worked hard to ensure that civil society voices are heard in all the official panels and on the VNRs. And while there continue to be limits to our digital engagement, we are glad that many more voices from national partners around the world could be heard this time. And we have understood that the pandemic has exposed vulnerabilities of the inequalities that have existed within our countries. And we've been through civil society engagement, voices have been heard, opinions collected. And now at this time, we wish to reflect together and then plan ahead of the next steps on our point, advocacy and campaign. And just to inform you that we are going to have a panel reflections on key policy areas and VNRs in 2021. And this panel conversation is to help us understand what worked well in our high-level political forum, maybe what challenges did we face, and probably what can we do more to engage civil society in a meaningful dialogue. And my first panel will be Mabel Bianca, who is the co-chair of major groups and other stakeholders coordination mechanism. For the sake of time, I may not be able to read her profile, but rather I'll wish to introduce Mabel to be able to share with us on the key messages and probably overall advocacy and the ministerial declaration delivered during the high-level political forum. Mabel, if you can hear me, take the floor. And probably you have 7 minutes to share with us.
Okay, thank you, Halima, and good morning, good afternoon, good night for everybody. I'm very happy to be with you today, and of course to be able to share some of our challenges, preoccupations, and also disappointments and deeply concerns, because you know these virtual high-level political forums are really a great difference, well, as that we used to have in person. So this year, maybe we could have a better communication because the platform, it was not so bad as last year, but due to the constraint of the number of people, we are not having a really meaningful participation, because what we are viewers, television viewers, we say, because we need to see the sessions by TV, by the TV of UN, but we couldn't do any participation, any questions, only those that are allowed to do. And often, if the time is short and it's happened, we are not able to say anything. So this is something that we are complaining, and we let know UN about that, but it couldn't be solved. By the other hand, I must say that yesterday afternoon, the session, the closings, we were waiting for that because, you know, this year, and as it used to be other years, but this year was very important that the major groups and other stakeholder coordination mechanisms, we participate in all the negotiations of the ministerial declaration previous to the high-level political forum. So it was more than a month in which we have the opportunity to listen all the positions, and we also have the opportunity once per discussion or negotiation to bring our voices. Of course, we are very, very concerned that we end all these long processes, and still state members couldn't have an agreement. And they are questioning issues that we suppose they are all agree and we couldn't come back again. There are issues at climate change, and they were questioning the Paris Agreement and how it's going to do that and how we are going to move ahead on that. They are questioning the human rights and specifically the gender equality, because they said they have difference there. They don't want to have gender equality as a main point, and this was, as well as climate change, one of the three issues that Russia asked for amendment as yesterday in the closing session. So the other points they were also discussing were the issue about the children and young participation. They doesn't want to incorporate children as being able to have meaningful participation. They are not recognizing the Convention on the Right of the Child that give them the right to participate and to have voice in all the issues that they are affected or could be affected. So this is something really very, very, for us, very new, because it's coming back before 2015 when we were discussing about the agenda. But later on, when it was approved and everybody commit to that, it's supposed this couldn't be anymore discussion, but it still was there. And also they were opposition to incorporate the issue of harassment of children. And we know how much it was the problem during the COVID. So these are the points that we are really very, very disappointed. And we were all the time requesting for a strong and good ministerial declaration. Why? Well, because this year, you remember last year we haven't. The last year we haven't because they couldn't agree. And at the last minute, as it was also virtual, we couldn't have, sorry, if someone could close the, could you close your, I have a voice there, sorry, close your mic, thank you. So the point is that last year we haven't, they couldn't have because it was all virtual, so they couldn't negotiate at the last minute, but this time we have. But it's so important because it's oriented how we are moving to solve and to do something to decrease and go ahead due to the impact, the negative impact of the COVID. So all the countries need to have a clear vision, and we need to know what we need to do and advance. And this new text is not so strong as we hope it be. They didn't want also to address the roots or the causes of the inequalities. We know all inequalities that were demonstrated by the COVID were really inequalities that pre-exist that the COVID pandemic. But they were put there, and all of us, we can see them. So we need to address them in order to eliminate this. If not, maybe a new virus or maybe another issue, and we are going to also remain with inequalities. And so the lemma that we are saying, not leave anyone behind, is not true. It's something else only to say, but it couldn't be true if we remain with those inequalities. And I want to let you know that, as you all know, Latin America and the Caribbean is the most unequal region. And 2 days ago, we have the presentation, not formal because they were not this year in the VNR, from Brazil. They do, the NGOs from Brazil, they do their evaluation as they did all years since they start the high level political forum. And this is a disaster. And this is the problem. They are not alone. What happened in Brazil is affecting all our region, but also the world, because the issue we need to understand is that the agenda is global and needs to be for everywhere, and needs to be a kind of word that if it's in any country, it happens so bad results and going back so much. So this is an impact, not only because Brazil is so big and so important, but because it's the interrelationship. That's why it's so important that the agenda included in the accountability and in all the commitments develop and developing countries, because this is not only the problem for developing countries, it's also a problem for developed countries. And we need how they are related each other. And this is why the SDG 16 is so important. So what I must say is the other issue, because those are the issues that we were discussing in the mayor group and other stakeholders, and we were proposing. And the last one I want to approach is the issue of the VNRs. VNRs, we not only request more time, we request a change in a way we are presenting and managing. Because as it is now, what we are doing is allowing the countries to present what they want, and in what they want is always everything okay, you know. And we, as civil society and other stakeholders, we need to have only 2 minutes to present a question, 2 questions, 3 questions, and they didn't answer. This is the truth. They didn't answer. And so what we do, we couldn't do nothing. So this is, sorry to say so strongly, but I'm going to say this is a show. This is not a real discussion. What we, as Women Mayor Group, we are proposing is to have this presentation previous regionally in the regional forums and come back to the high-level political forum with concrete differences or changes or questions also about the difficulties and how to solve them. But a real discussion, and of course, more time, because in 20 minutes is impossible to have any serious analysis or discussion. So these are, thank you. This is what I want to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bianco, for your time and those serious commitments and informative session that you've just shared. I wish to acknowledge that indeed COVID-19 seriously undermines our effort of attaining sustainable development and the challenges the civil society space is facing. For the sake of time, wish to invite the next speaker, Mr. Leonard Mandishara. Leonard Mandishara, I wish you to share more on the VNR sessions in Zimbabwe and how maybe to ensure a follow-up at the country level. And I'll wish to kindly ask that you use 5 minutes, strictly 5 minutes. And Leonard, if you can hear me, please take the stage.
Okay, thank you so much, Alim, and also good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for us to also make our presentation today at this important session. Like what she said, my name is Leonard Mandishara, and I'm from the National Association of Non-Governmental Organizations, which is the umbrella body of NGOs that are working in Zimbabwe. So we also play also a key role towards the issue with regards to Agenda 2030. And in this regards, I'm just going to give a snapshot in terms of the progress, the processes, and also the involvement of civil society organizations around the issue of the voluntary national review. I think, as you may be aware, that Zimbabwe this year presented for the second time its voluntary national review report, having presented in the first report in 2017. And we understand that this is an opportunity for countries and also other stakeholders to reflect on some of the key aspects with regards the actions, the programs, the successes, and the challenges that the countries are facing towards the achievement of the sustainable development goals. And as Zimbabwe, we also take this process seriously as civil society organizations, because we feel that this is an agenda that is supposed to address the peculiar and unique needs of the vulnerable groups and also the disenfranchised groups of the society. So in this regards, the effective participation of the marginalized groups in the process of developing the voluntary national review report to reflect the aspiration and the perspective of civil society and also the disenfranchised groups is pivotal and critical if the report is to reflect the situation of what is happening on the ground. So in this regards, we are also happy to be part of today's discussion. So for Zimbabwe, in terms of the report for 2021, we see that there was some kind of opening up of platforms for engagement or participation of civil society organizations. And I'm also happy to highlight that from civil society's perspectives, we have two structures that are playing a pivotal role in terms of contributing and engaging on the process of the voluntary national review, as well as the broader aspects that then assist the country in achieving the sustainable development goals. One of it is the sector approach that is within the National Association of Non-Governmental Organizations, where we approached all the 10 sectors, and we then parceled the different, sustainable development goals, all the 17, into different thematic areas, and assign CSOs who are going to be assisting in capturing data that is important for us to be able to also assess the progress and also assess the implementation of projects, programs, and actions that are pivotal for the achievement of the sustainable development goals. Over and above the NANGO platform, we also have the Zimbabwe Civil Society Reference Group on SDGs that is also coordinated by the Poverty Reduction Forum Trust. And this group is also playing a pivotal role in terms of, lobbying and advocating for more actions towards what's supposed to be done. And its representation also looks at the different sectors. So these two groups, we collaborated in a process where we led the participation and also the gathering of the views or the perspectives of civil society organization in the 2021 voluntary national review report, where we went to the different regions and also the different sectors in order to then gather their perspective regarding the progress that the country was making around the sustainable development goals. And that process assisted us to come up with a report, an alternative report of civil society organizations, which we ably shared with the government for them to be able to include the perspectives of civil society organizations in the national report. So this is what we have been doing as CSOs. Then
thank you so much, Leonard. I think I'm hoping that you'll be able to share a link to the presentation in regards to Zimbabwe. And for the sake of time, I wish to welcome the next speaker, Madam Mary Lewis, who also works with the German NGO Forum on Environmental and Development. I wish to welcome you to share with us on the German VNR processes and the broader digital engagement in the forum. Marie-Louise, you strictly have 5 minutes to share your presentation.
Thank you, Halima. So I will not go into too much detail on the German VNR because you probably have, I mean, I want to do like a summary of what I think the most important parts of. So, I mean, as many of you have been following the HLPF for many years, and I think this year was especially depressing in a way that we could not be with each other. And we saw that due to the pandemic, the inequalities were just going further and further apart, and everybody was saying it. So it's kind of, I think, especially in comparison to the first and the second week, the first week being all the experts speaking about the increasing troubles our world is in, and then the second week where every VNR, as was said before, is always presenting all the good and shiny things that are happening. It's kind of like being in a broken mirror world where on the one hand, you know that everybody knows how inequalities are increasing and the detrimental effect on our environment, but governments are still only reporting the good things. So I think Germany in that regard was kind of a standard VNR because they were also mostly focusing on everything they're doing well, so that even in the site event yesterday evening, the international commenters were congratulating the German government on being so sustainable and so forward-looking, which from a German civil society perspective is simply not true. So I think what I would be interested to discuss with all of you in the breakout sessions is how can we bring more honesty in these discussions? And I think the proposal that we have had before to change the setting of the VNRs, maybe bring it in the regional forums first and then discuss the more strategic ideas in the HLPF would be really interesting. I'm not sure if government's up for it, as the HLPF reform hasn't really led to anything concrete so far either. But I think we as civil society are, at least some of us, are at the point where it just, in a way, it doesn't make sense to continue this way if there's this parallel image of problems being addressed and then governments not referring to them. What I think would be also a possibility is, if you all remember, the Action for Sustainable Development did a really interesting webpage on the Great Recovery, and I think a lot of the things that were said there, which was related to G7 and G20 mostly, but I think we can bring that to the table at HLPF too. What we need is to overcome these inequalities before we can actually recover from the pandemic, and that's vaccination, that's debt relief, and that's financial support. And I have been, and more colleagues have been addressing this continuously with states, but it seems like they just ignore this, maybe because it's the wrong people from the government at HLPF. So I think for the messages that I would be interested to come out of the HLPF from civil society is that it's kind of enough. It's 6 HLPFs where we have listened to governments just present this happy image of themselves, maybe with some slide, or, okay, this is not going well, but we're working on it. While we see on the other hand that experts and of course all of our constituencies tell us it's not going well. So I think if we come up with really clear political messages that we don't want this to continue anymore, that would be good. And maybe one more thing, Halima, if I can, on participation. I think that that's a two-edged sword in a way, that I see that we have had an increase of participation, which is really good. And I think the major group system has worked excellently on that to really address civil society in all the VNR countries. Again, here the question is, impact. And I think this is something to address as well. How can we, if we now have in this virtual world, have more people at the table, how can we increase our impact and not make it this television viewer setting, as was said before?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mary Louise. And something that I'm learning is that this virtual engagement, as much as we are attracting more participants, we still have maybe the disadvantage of measuring impact. And this is something that maybe we'll consider working on or thinking about. My last panelist is the name is Diade Dibaka, who will also share more insights on the digital engagement and learning from key issues of the event. That name is a bit difficult for me. If Diade, if you can hear me, kindly take the floor.
Great.
And thank you so much.
Thanks very much, and you got my name pretty well. So I'm very happy to be here today on behalf of Forus and to talk about the issue of digitalization and what came out of the high-level political forum this year. So Forus, CIVICUS, A4SD, TechSoup and others took the lead this year in jointly organising a high-level political forum side event on the topic of how to promote a more enabling digital environment for civil society globally. So this was really to also launch a new Forus report we've produced on promoting a more enabling environment for civil society. And I'm going to ask my colleague to put the link into the chat box there to our new report. But there was lots of interest in joining the debate, and our speakers were quite high level and included the OECD, the EU, the government of Denmark, Finland, Portugal. We had a local government speaker from Taiwan. We had TechSoup. We had which is an international tech NGO, and we had civil society representatives from Zambia and Colombia. And so we all agreed that there needs to be much more of a sense of urgency about this debate, and that governments need to become more proactive in terms of trying to respond effectively to what you could describe as a very highly accelerated process of digitalization that's taking place globally. And that if this isn't done quickly, that it will significantly increase the kind of inequalities that Marie-Louise was just talking about there, social and economic inequalities, and also will further reduce civic space for all. So I'm just going to say a little bit about digital access, which came up a lot. And really the staggering figure is that half of the world's population is not yet digitally connected, and that includes a lot of CSOs. And this does seek social and economic exclusion and marginalization and a lack of ability to participate. And this digital divide is strengthening, and stark inequalities are growing between those who can access these digital technologies and those who can't. So the digital inclusion of everybody must be ensured, and this is something civil society has to advocate very strongly for, and particularly of low income and socially excluded demographic groups. And civil society has a clear need also to access relevant digital information, capacity building, and also what we call digital community architecture, so that civil society organizations can function effectively as well. I want to say a little bit about civic space as well, which is a really important issue for civil society. So digitalization does provide civil society with new ways of exercising freedom of association, assembly, and expression, but it also provides governments and others with ways of restricting those rights. So it is critical that the process of digitalization that's happening right now, that it serves to expand rather than to reduce or shrink civic space. And an enabling operating environment for CSOs is absolutely necessary, both online and offline, if civil society is to flourish, and also if CSOs are to fulfill a range of important public interest roles, such as supporting governments to promote social and economic recovery from the pandemic, and also to monitor and implement the SDGs. Another issue that did come up very quickly was the issue, of adequate regulation and democratic governance of the digital sphere, because what is happening is that a number of small, large, powerful tech companies are effectively policing the use of many of the social technologies which are so bound up with the civic space that civil society needs globally. So there is a need for proper regulation, and for work believe that civil society should call for is more democratic multi-stakeholder governance of these important and powerful technologies. And if this doesn't happen, we do believe that it will significantly significantly if digitalization continues without effective intervention by governments and proper governance and inclusion of other stakeholders, that civic space, human rights, freedom and justice around the world will be undermined in the very near future. So civil society does need to push for a couple of things, for more enabling legislative frameworks in their own national context for digitalization. They need to press governments to push to introduce progressive policies on issues like cybersecurity, privacy, accessibility, inclusion and data ownership. They also need to insist on access to continuous digital capacity building for all. And this is essential for civil society as well. We know how quickly these technologies change. The civil society also needs to develop important strategic multi-stakeholder partnerships with governments, international organizations, donors, private sector organizations, the Tech for Good NGOs and others, to really try to promote access, equity, and good regulation and governance of the digital sphere. So they were really the conclusions of our debate. So we can't underestimate how much needs to be done in this area. So again, we urge other CSOs to take this up, to really scrutinize what their governments are doing. Is your government developing a digital strategy? If so, is civil society involved in the development of that strategy? If not, you should push to become included, because it's very important that civil society is factored in to the national strategies on digitalization. So thank you very much, moderator. Back to you.
Thank you so much. I think this very amazing presentation, and something that I'm just learning is as much as we have limited time, maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes presentation, I think something that I'm learning is there are a lot of issues are coming out, and maybe they need more time so that we might exhaust these issues. I wish to thank each and every panelist for your excellent presentation, that you've been able to highlight a number of key reflections on this year's high-level political forum. And at this juncture and moment, and before, I'll also thank our amazing participants for following through conversations and keeping the chat room fully engaged. And now we want to hear your views, and we will invite you to join our breakout room. And we'll also have a moment for discussion, and then we'll come back here to share our final feedback at the end. Maybe Oli, we can have the link to our breakout session.
Thank you so much, Halima, and thank you again to everyone for that amazing opening panel. I think you've really stimulated the discussions and got us thinking already. While the conversations were going on, we've just been trying to set up the breakout rooms. They are nearly ready to go, just finalizing the names on those. So you should shortly receive an invitation to one of those breakout rooms. We're just finalizing setting those up. And then if you would like to go to a French or Spanish speaking group, please make sure to let us know, because we will have a specific group for French and a specific group for Spanish, because the interpretation will not go through onto the breakout rooms. So if you just give us another just 30 seconds while we set those up, and then you'll have the automatic invitations coming through. Welcome back to the main session again. I hope that those reflections were useful. There's never enough time in these sessions. I wish we had more time. As you know, in the past, we would have these on the weekend in the HLPF, so we would have the whole afternoon. But at least I hope that there was some time for people to gather some views. Before we go to the second panel, I think we just have maybe 4 or 5 minutes for any any urgent feedback that people would like to bring from their breakout groups. Please feel free to raise your hand. Dennison, yes, please.
Yeah, okay. I thought there were 5 key things, but I will just highlight 2. One is that people felt that there was very little media coverage of the HLPF at their own national context. And they felt that there needs to be more done for whether social media or wider media, especially in their own countries. And Russia, Australia, and Malaysia confess there was hardly any coverage on the HLPF. The second point of the many points is that it would be a good idea for CSOs to have a global forum pre, post, around the time, because the 2-minute intervention or TV watching of the one doesn't enhance participation in the same way. And so that was highlighted as well. Thank you. There were other points, but I'll give other groups a chance. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. And please do capture all that in writing, and we'll make sure to collect all the views in writing that you can. That's excellent. And particularly strong points there on the media and how we get our messages out. Maybe we'll come back to that in the second half when we hear also from the SDG Action Campaign. Sandra, you have your hand raised. Did you want to share some thoughts?
Yes. First of all, it was great talking to people. We should do that more. I've given some statements during HLPF, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to discuss much. So I think this should be prioritized more. Also, we have some points about shifting our focus from only HLPF to the local level and grassroots level, and to engage more with local CSOs instead of giving so much attention to just these 2 weeks, but have a more a better representation of the local voices as well. And also in the future, to be able to engage people, have a hybrid model when we are physically in New York, that it's also streamed and it's possible to participate from other places in the world, because the digital format also makes it possible for other groups to participate. And thank you so much for all the to the coordinators of the NGO major group and other major groups. It has been really great working with all of you. So thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. I think you've also highlighted there about how we bring those local stories, and we don't just focus on this 2 weeks. And I think Clara will talk a little bit in a minute about how we hope to bring some of those voices forward through a new web platform. So absolutely agree with you about using the internet for amplifying and sharing those voices, I think is crucial. So we are running out of time. So I see 4 of the other groups also want to feedback. So if I can ask you each just to give 1 minute. So I see Adriana first, then I see Akio, Deirdre, and Lena. So Adriana, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be very brief. We had interesting discussion about how online HLPF makes it challenging to have any meaningful participation in general. So probably most influencing could be done on national level, but still there should be avenues sought to strengthen meaningful participation and inclusive processes. And then also we discussed the VNR presentations that now they're mostly like tourist promotion type of videos. Instead of that, it should be more content-based, problem-focused discussions to provide also ways forward and how to address challenges. Thank you.
Great, absolutely. Yeah, those videos, they always seem far too kind of glossy for a real discussion. Yes, Deirdre, over to you, please.
Thanks, Ollie. So our group, basically, a couple of issues came up, and I'm just going to present them briefly. So first of all, the space and time around the HLPF is completely insufficient. Some suggestions were that we should learn from the past, from previous formats like the Commission for Sustainable Development, where more time was given to thematic issues. The role of CSOs, there was a question about whether CSOs really, instead of going along with mechanisms that have been put in place that are not considered very useful, that instead they should focus on monitoring the impact of the Agenda 2030 on the most disadvantaged populations to see what's the difference between the situation of those groups in 2015 and now, 5 years after the Agenda 2030 has been implemented. Others called for stronger language to be used by CSOs, more political pressure to be placed on governments. It was suggested that maybe CSOs should consider withdrawing their cooperation or collaboration with the HLPF completely if it continues to be ineffective. And others suggested that it was very important to link HLPF discussions with domestic issues where governments are concerned, the domestic implications of some of the discussions that take place at the HLPF. So that was really it. Hope I haven't left anything out.
Thanks, Deirdre. Some really strong thoughts there in terms of potentially walking away altogether. Maybe that could be something also we pick up in the second panel. So Akio, over to you, please.
Yeah, so I'll just make 3 points. One is that, of course, we have this HLPF for a kind of like 10 days event. But besides that, we should always have some joint advocacy work at the regional level and also national level. That's the first point. The second point was that there should be more joint work. Of course, we have to respect diversity, but sometimes there is competition. So we should really work on how we could work together more strategically. And third point is that there should be a strength and follow-up. So there were several other things, but I should stop here because of time. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Akio. And again, that point about not just thinking about the HLPF as a moment, but how do we maintain that pressure? And I think that's absolutely what we'll come to. So just a final word, tal vez en español para Lina, por favor.
Gracias. Además de lo que ya han mencionado, en nuestro grupo conversamos sobre el hecho de que las sesiones virtuales ayudan a que muchas personas que no puedan ir a Nueva York se junten a las discusiones. Sin embargo, tienen la dificultad de que se pierde el espacio de abogacía que hemos tenido en el foro y que es importante siempre mantener. O sea, en el foro no solo suceden las sesiones estrictamente planeadas en el horario, sino que además también existen discusiones y conversaciones y la posibilidad de hacer incidencia que no se ofrece en la versión virtual del foro. Esperamos que el otro año haya una opción híbrida, virtual para quienes no pueden desplazarse a Nueva York, pero también presencial para quienes sí puedan hacerlo y de esa manera juntar lo mejor de los dos mundos, del mundo virtual y del mundo presencial. Es importante también finalmente que tengamos una participación de los mecanismos de participación de los grupos mayoritarios para articular, por ejemplo, la voz de Latinoamérica y el Caribe. Y asimismo, sería muy bueno que hubiera un espacio de conversación entre el gobierno y la sociedad civil, es decir, un espacio en el que podamos interpelar las presentaciones que hace el gobierno más allá de la tiranía de los 2 minutos del tiempo, que es terrible. En 2 minutos no alcanzamos a controvertir aquello que los gobiernos están presentando y tampoco podríamos hacerlo de la mejor manera posible, siendo la nuestra una voz tan relevante porque es la voz de la sociedad civil. Gracias, Oli.
Gracias, Lina. I think the Mexican ambassador himself, as the co-chair of the session, did raise the point that actually the time is so limited. And I think many member states themselves recognize that the time constraints on the VNRs are just far too tight and it's not a real dialogue. So yes, I think creative ways on how we extend those times and enable for more meaningful dialogue will be crucial. So this has been a great opening, and I think it sets the scene very well for the second panel. So I'd like to hand over now to Mr. Paul Divakar from the Communities Discriminated on the Basis of Work and Descent. Please, Paul, chair, well, and I should also say co-chair of GCAP. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Oli. I think it's been a tremendous, even if it's only 1 hour, I think so much of rich discussion has come. And I think this is the right time we look at the delivering the recovery process, the commitments that have been made and how well are we doing. So we have half an hour for this, and then the next half an hour, we'll focus on a wider discussion on how do we move the next steps in September and beyond to make a better thing. I think a lot of suggestions have come in, and I think it'll be good to have a wider discussion on this. So we have a very tight program with several important presentations going to be made. So first, I'd like to invite Oli and Clara Sanchez, Oli Henman and Clara Sanchez of the Action for Sustainable Development, and looking at what are the key events and what possible campaigns that we should be doing together. And as Oli said, I represent the Global Call to Action Against Poverty and the Global Forum on Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent. Over to you, Oli and Clara.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's great to be able to share a few ideas. And as others have already said, I think it's been really wonderful to have a little bit of time to reflect together during this HLPF. I mean, it has been a very, very busy 2 weeks, and it's great to have even just, as you say, a couple of hours where we can reflect. So I wanted to share a few ideas on the joint advocacy, and this picks up very much on some of the suggestions that came up in the discussions and the breakouts. So some of you will be aware that, you know, as well as the HLPF, we as Action for Sustainable Development were very conscious about another number of key moments that are happening this year, and we see this year as a crucial year if we're serious about a recovery that is just and sustainable, and also that gives us any chance of delivering the SDGs by 2030. And it was interesting that in a lot of the presentations that we heard this year at the HLPF, there was this question mark: can we still deliver by 2030? Is it still realistic? And I think now is the time to accelerate actions if we're serious about delivering the agenda. So we did have the G7 earlier this year in June, and we worked together with a number of other key coalitions to put together a joint letter, which I'll share in a moment. We then have the Week of Action in September, and I'm really glad that we're going to hear from the SDG Action Campaign and how we can all work together to put pressure and raise more public awareness and raise issues directly in the media during that Week of Action when the leaders gather again at the UN General Assembly. Then we'll have the G20, and that's happening in Italy, and then the COP later in the year happening in the UK. So a number of moments where there might be some public interest and opportunities to put pressure and raise concerns through the media. So what can we advocate for together? I wanted to highlight a few main points. Again, these have been worked on with many of you who are on this call. One of the key things is a campaign that's been called Unmute Civil Society, and that was kindly guided by our Danish colleagues at Global Focus and the government of Denmark and Costa Rica, picking up these recommendations that they've now sent in to the UN Secretary General to call for a genuine, meaningful engagement of civil society at UN meetings. That includes some of the elements that we've talked about in terms of hybrid meetings, in terms of real digital inclusion, but it also talks about this idea of an anchor, a focal point at the UN for civil society. Some people have called it an envoy that would actually act as a kind of champion for civil society across the UN. And it's very important to say this is not a representative of civil society. This is someone who is there to open doors for civil society across all UN processes. So that is really aimed to be a role that can help to open up the dialogues in all of the different UN forums that we've talked about. There's also a strong call, as you've heard from Deirdre, in terms of digital accessibility. And this year, I think it was noticeable, for example, in Angola, that the UN actually provided their country office for a local representative to be able to speak on the VNR in Angola. So where there isn't yet access, how can we help to build that infrastructure? And then finally, how can we work together to support and share those local stories, exactly as was asked for and raised during the breakout rooms. And we have a regular call, a campaigning call that some of you already joined on a Wednesday. If others are interested to join those calls, we're very, very keen to have more voices so that we can keep amplifying each other's campaigns. So finally, just for me to close out, I want to show you the letter that I mentioned that was launched around the G7, and we'll be updating this letter for the UN General Assembly and for the G20, where we talk about a great recovery. And Marie-Louisa already mentioned this, that recovery would include a healthy, green, and just recovery. Those are the key elements. Under the health element, we talk about vaccine equity and the supporting the People's Vaccine Campaign, but also universal health care and healthy food systems as a way to build health throughout people's lives. A green side, we talk about planet and biodiversity. We clearly talk about climate change and the major targets that would need to be agreed at the COP in Glasgow. And we talk about the impact on social justice from climate. And we know that, for example, the high levels of drought and forest fires and so on are having a direct impact on people's abilities to actually grow their own food. And then finally, on the justice side, we've called for a new social contract. I know that a number of groups are talking about this. The trade unions and others have been highlighting that, the importance of protecting civil rights or civic space, and then the economic systems that go with that. So ensuring that economic agreements that are made, whether at the G7 or at the G20 or at the UN General Assembly, do actually lead to real financing being available to those countries that we know are currently being squeezed and facing massive challenges with debt and huge international gaps in their financing. So combining those different elements is something that we think is essential, and we really look forward to campaigning with all of you as we build up towards September. So I'm going to stop there, and hopefully Clara can just share a couple more slides from her point of view.
Sure, I will just share my screen now. All right, so I am very happy to introduce ZOVU today. ZOVU is a project that we at Action for Sustainable Development have been working for almost a year, and we are very much looking forward to seeing it come alive. ZOVU will be a new online space where frontline activists, social movements, and NGOs can connect with one another and showcase their work. Think of it as something in between a directory of grassroots groups and a social media platform. Each member who joins will be able to create their own profile and let the world know about their different initiatives and their approaches. It will launch this September, and it will be open for any member of civil society to join. The platform will be story focused in that the attention will be centered around how the different movements are affecting change, what their approaches are, and which social, political, or environmental circumstances are pushing them to work in these directions. Members will be able to upload multimedia content to tell their stories on their profile. And just to give you a heads up, the midterm plan is to connect these groups with individuals who may be interested in financially supporting them. We think it's a great opportunity to have the possibility for supporters to engage directly with initiatives that are meaningful to them. The website is not up online yet, but I can give you a sneak peek as we wait for the development to come through. As you can see, this is what the homepage will look like. The top of the homepage, this is what it will look like. I'm not sure if you can see fully on your screens, but different initiatives will be featured prominently with powerful images and essential information about what they do. We also have designed a system whereby initiatives can establish their themes so that supporters can easily find projects that tackle the issues that they are most interested in. So each initiative will have different themes that they can say they are working on. We are working with the small groups of grassroots movements. We have been working with them this year, and they are producing stories about their work. And this will be the initial group of members that will have profiles on ZOVU. They will be helping us test out the website. And they have been working on very good, very well produced stories that they want to share about their approaches. So just so that you can see for your information, this is the first group of members. We are very happy that it's a group that are very spread out throughout the Global South, and that the leadership is community-based, and that they are tackling social justice and climate change from very, very different approaches. So we're very excited to have their stories out. I will now show you one of the stories, one of these sample stories that this small group has produced. This story is from Rutare Initiative, an environmental organization in Burundi. I have seen Audrey Habonimana joined us today. I'm very happy to see her here. She is the liaison point for Rotare, and this is one of the short stories that they have developed this year, and it is a type of story that we would like to see on Zobu. So I'll play it. It's a video. It's in French, but I'm sure that the interpreters will be able to translate to English.
L'heure est grave au Burundi. Les chiffres montrent qu'en 2050, il n'y aura presque plus de couverture forestière si rien n'est fait. Le Burundi dépend à 95% du bois et du charbon de bois comme énergie pour le chauffage et de cuisson. La déforestation systématique. La perte des bois entraîne aussi des problèmes sociaux comme l'exode rural. Malheureusement, pour la plupart des Burundais, l'environnement n'est pas une priorité. Nous voulons mener un changement de direction complète. Il faut que la société burundaise s'implique dans l'urgence climatique. Notre solution, sensibiliser les gens de l'école primaire. Dénommé Utali Initiative, nous avons un projet qui s'intitule Éducation à l'environnement pour la petite enfance. Et son but est de former les enfants dès leur jeune âge, entre 8 et 11 ans, à connaître, aimer et protéger l'environnement.
So as you can see, these are the type of stories that really in a very short time, they're able to show the urgency of a problem and the approach that one of the organizations is using to work on it. And of course, Zobu is...
We're running out of time, Clara, please.
Can you repeat that, please?
We're running out of time. Can you please wind up?
Okay. I just have one more slide. So for those who are interested in knowing when they can sign up and have a profile come up on Zobu, just make sure to follow us on Twitter at Action4SD, or become a member of Action for Sustainable Development on action4sd.org/contact, and there you can stay on the loop and be notified as soon as you can create your profile when the website is live. Thank you. I will now pass the mic on to Marina Ponti from the SDG Action Campaign, who would like to say a few words as well. Marina, over to you.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you, Oli and colleagues for the invitation. And also let me congratulate you all on the incredible work you pulled off in the past 2 weeks during the high-level political forum and the VNR processes. Now, my role today is really to look at the future, and as Oli was saying, at the next campaigns. So it is really a great pleasure to be launching today, along with Action for Sustainable Development, GCAP, and other partner, the Global Week of Action, which will run from the 17th to the 28th of September, purposely overlapping with the first day of the pre-COP in Milan, to underline the urgency of the climate agenda and the need to broaden the movement and encourage greater synergies. Now, I'll ask Clara to show, to give you a sneak preview also of a video which we're finalizing, to promote the week. Clara, you can play it.
We watched as everything turned upside down. Witnessed the overlooked, became leaders. Looked at the unseen, became heroes. And saw how quickly things can change. Now this is our moment to show the world what change really looks like. To prove a cleaner, fairer, healthier world is possible. Turn it around and start the de-revolution. Join us for the Global Week to act for SDGs and play your part. This is our moment, and the world is watching.
Thank you, Clara. So you saw some of the messages. So for us and for many of our partners, we believe that 2021, despite the challenges, is really a turning point for people and the planet. And we believe that the pandemic that brought on our societies that deepen the profound inequalities, at the same time is giving us the opportunity to tackle once for all the root causes of the failures of our systems. And one of the speakers, now from last hour, from this event, also talked about the need to be more loud and also the need to engage more people. And we believe, and we hope to see it happen in September, that we have the opportunity to engage more people than ever before. Why now? Why in September? COVID made us all realize that change is possible when there is a vision and the urgency is there. So now people everywhere are also realizing how individual action can have an impact, not just on our lives, but on our societies. And we saw it happen through the pandemic. So we believe we have an opportunity to inspire new audience, talk to new people, particularly young people, and unite them under a very creative campaign, which is really calling on the individual to be part of rewriting our narrative, what we call flipping the script. And this year, we really want to put individual people back in the picture and driving home a message that there is hope beyond the pandemic and that we can all be part of the solution. Somehow the narrative that we have prepared with an agency that has really studied all the different audiences, the new audiences that we want to reach, has built a narrative around the we revolution, believing that everyone can be part of this change. And if we empower and we inspire, everyone and make them all count. And somehow we believe very strongly, like the groups around this table, this virtual table, are calling for a healthy, just and green recovery. And we believe that there is a broader audience because of COVID who now understand the deep inequality, who now understand the urgency of addressing the climate change and also of addressing some of the issues that also were raised in the previous panel in terms of gender inequality and others. So we're very proud and humbled to be with you all. We really want to pursue and help you push the many policy asks that you have been gathering in these documents, and we want to help raising the voice loud. We want to help raise the visibility and the media engagement on this issue. And it's not a coincidence that one of the official launch of the Global Week to Act for the SDG will be tomorrow in an event which we're organizing in Milan, combining music as a way to really reach out to new audience to inspire for change. Now, let me pass on to Anand Kantaria, who's leading from our end the mobilization, just to share some of the tools and the strategy that we have prepared. Over to you, Anand.
Thank you so much, Marina, and thanks, Ollie, Clara, and everyone around the table. So good to see so many familiar faces. I'm just going to very quickly go through some of the tools. As Marina said, the ambition this year is to really double down and bring in a lot of new audiences. So we're in the process of developing an open source toolkit once again this year for the Global Week of Action, where we're going to encompass a number of tools from the SDG Action campaign, such as our butterfly effect filters, a new set of guidance notes around turning point dialogues, which are a series of conversations really held at a local level, driving home the point that this is a unique moment in time, and the time is now to transform, to reinvent and reimagine our shared societies. We'll also have a filter, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute when we talk about the new campaign. And this year, we're really looking to also bring in a lot of tools from our partners. A number of you will recognize the CSO Great Recovery Letter that Ollie mentioned earlier, but also the Act Now campaign, which is the UN official campaign on climate, which really lays out very specific actions that individuals can take, from taking shorter showers to walking to work. So really making it very practical for these new audiences of individuals to get involved. We're also focusing on food a lot this year in line with the Food Systems Summit, and also working with our partners on things like digital cleanup. So getting rid of all of our unused data, pictures and unused storage so that we have less strain on the system. So a number of different tools, and we'll be happy to kind of share those with you in more detail. And I also wanted to introduce to you some of the new creative assets coming into the toolkit this year. If we can just have the next slide, please. As Marina said, there is a really nice manifesto that the agency's developed, which goes into a lot more detail about what the We Revolution means. I'll just quickly read the last few lines because I think these are the most powerful. So the We Revolution: to change everything will take everyone. We'll redefine who can make the change and show how to create a united global movement of people power and not just powerful people. We'll prove that we are the change, turning hope into action, and in the process, turn it around for people and planet. So we can have the next slide, please. So there are a number of digital stickers which kind of show this flipping of the script idea. So talking about going from apathy to action, from powerful people to people power, from hope to fear, all driving home this notion of it's not a he, she, they, or it revolution, it's a we revolution. And it's going to take all of us to actually achieve that. So a huge number of creative assets and ideas coming out for use on social media and offline. And in particular, three very specific activations that we want to talk to you about today, which we've got on the final slide, which has come from our agency. So creative ideas such as flipping the script, showing that celebrities, activists, politicians, and all sorts of people can do the unexpected. So here you see Lewis Hamilton riding a bicycle, for example, showing that people can be seen in unusual environments and actually do things differently this time as we reinvent and reimagine. In the middle, we have a filter which talks about the selfie-less selfie, or the selfless selfie. When we flip the camera on our phones, we're in selfie mode and we're putting ourselves or the individual in the picture. So this is a filter that's been designed and will be available on the iPhone and Android, allowing people to actually show what they're doing in their communities to turn it around for the issues that they care about. And these filters will hold language such as turning it around for gender, for justice, for equality, and really open up the space for people to share all the little acts that they're doing in their day-to-day lives to turn things around. And finally, an idea called the People's Mural. As we all know, not all heroes wear capes. And this is a project to identify 17 local heroes selected by their own communities, which really have been working day and night to champion one of the SDGs in their local communities. So, and then actually creating a mural of them and putting it up in a public building in their locality. So these are the sorts of ideas that are coming out for this year's campaign. As you can see, it's very fresh, very creative, and really using this notion of flipping the script and turning things around, because this really is our last best chance. So I know we're short on time, so I had to rush through quite a lot there, but please do join us. You can find out more on our website, actforsdgs.org, and follow the hashtag #TurnItAround. Thank you all so much, and back to you, Paul, I believe.
Thank you very much, Anand, and all of you, Anand, Marina, Claire, and Oli. Time is really short, but you really packed so much of substance, and you know, this is not just narrating or analyzing the situation, but helping us to really move forward. I think this is exciting. I will not narrate them all, but I think this whole thing of turning it around and ensure that you know, we have people power and not continue to be dominated by powerful people. And I think the whole aspect of from fear to hope, apathy to action, it's really great. I'm sure we'll have some time to discuss, but may I invite Carmen Carpelis? Please also introduce yourself. She leads the Road to COP26. And so over to you, Carmen. Just a word of caution regarding the time, so that we'll have some time for us where we can open the floor for a discussion. Over to you, Carmen.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Oli, for the invitation. Well, my name is Carmen Capriles. I am from a small organization called Reacción Climática. I follow the climate change issues in the high-level political forum as well as in the COP. And want to tell you a little bit about the updates. It's been 2 busy months regarding climate change, especially since we had DSB during June, and we have now a fixed date for the COP. COP is going to be from October 31 to November 12th. This and it's going to be in person. So this poses a number of challenges for civil society as well as for the organizations of the COP, basically toward vaccination. So there is an initiative that's starting around vaccination, so people can attend the COP. One of the problems that we're seeing is that registrations for COP were closed in December 2020. A lot has happened since then. So what is the process going to be? It's quite messy, especially around civil society, since we don't know if it's registration is going to be, or accreditation is going to be open again, for example. The other thing is, well, vaccination that I already talked about. The issues that are going to be worked through this COP are basically basically the ones that we've been following around adaptation, mitigation. It is important to acknowledge that we still need 100 billion of finance for all the actions that have to be done. And that's one of the main things that we need in order to implement the measures. The other thing is, we hope that in the next COP, they can really deliver the climate action or the gender action plan, which is also one of the important documents that we need, especially from the gender point of view. The other thing is how the different stakeholders are going to be engaged, and the empowerment, and to keep on strengthening the action for climate empowerment, or the ACE. So those are some of the things that we will be seeing on the next COP. Anyway, I think it's going to be important that we start creating this culture of having the both modalities, like online, because we have seen that online we can be able to engage a lot of people within these processes that was hard before when they were in presence, but also strengthen the possibility to have people on the room, because we also have seen the challenges around the virtual, that we only have like 2 minutes to talk, and sometimes we won't get the answers that we're waiting for, as Mabel said. So it's important also to be in person. So that's going to be, those are the main challenges that we are going to be facing toward next COP. And I see that Felix Dodd has posted some blog sites that I haven't checked, but probably will be interesting. The UK government's expectations for Glasgow. There's going to be a lot of expectations, but one of the things is important to highlight is that we need greater action. We have seen this year, in April 3rd, 2021, we have reached 420 parts per million of CO2. Despite the fact that last year, almost half a year, nobody was moving. We hadn't had any major emissions from many sectors like transport. Still, the CO2 levels have been rising. And if right now we are in 420, probably June is going to be the first month ever to have a 420 average. It's a major milestone, because that means that it's accelerating the fact that we're going to reach earlier the 1.5, and that has to be a call for urgent action. And that I think it's important to highlight this milestone that we have set this year, because how do we turn back? That is the big question, and we have not been able to answer. And to conclude, one of the last issues that we're worried about is to have partners like Unilever, which is a transnational that has been many times driver of deforestation for palm oil. Most of their products are palm oil, is one of the key partners. And that's also an issue that many of the activists are pointing out and highlighting, and to see, because we don't want COPs to be greenwashers of big companies, of big transnationals, and we want to find COPs as more transparent and accountable as is possible, in the case that is possible. So thank you very much. I hope I gave you a small panorama of what's going on right now toward the road to COP.
Thank you very much, Carmen. I think you have added to the toolkit of what is needed. I think, as you rightly said, without climate action, climate justice, none of this would be really would have any meaning. These goals. So friends, we now have a very, very interesting, and if you've seen the first session was looking at the narratives, the analysis, what went wrong, what is it. But I think the second session, as I have said earlier, is really packed with what is it that we can do, because most of the time we know that there is so much to complain, but sometimes we are stuck. But here we have a comprehensive set of toolkits that have been offered. Congratulations to Action for Sustainable Development, GCAP, CIVICUS, and especially UN SDG Action Campaign, and of course also the climate action campaigns that have come up with these. But before we go into that discussion, I'll be not doing justice to the global call to action against poverty's main mandate, that the focus for us needs to be on leave no one behind, because we can be doing it, but still, if those who are continuously being marginalized and historically been discriminated and excluded, if they don't have a place in the way that we are asking for our the justice, then I don't think that all this will have any meaning. So the focus still has to be on leave no one behind. And also, as many have said, the COVID has given a completely different flip to this whole thing. That one, there is a hope that we can do it despite the tremendous pandemic that we have been faced with, but also the excluding the inequalities have been completely accentuated. And how do we address that, I think, is another thing, especially the need for people's vaccine, social protection, and then financing for development, which includes these communities who have been historically marginalized. Then also there was a suggestion that we'll have to look at a different bottom-up process. And I think a People's Assembly process is being promoted, being put on as a possibility. And we need to see how the national, regional really links up creatively with the local, with the global, without which I think just having actions at the UN we've seen does not have any traction unless and until it really clicks up. And the several actions in the Global Week of Action have been put forward here. The very interesting Turn It Around action campaign, the things that have been highlighted by Oli, to process this, we really need to be serious and have some weekly discussions. And how do we do that? Can we definitely visualize this by this letter, Healthy, Green, and Just World? The beautiful platform that has been suggested by Clara Zobo, and how we can actually engage with it in this whole thing. And then in the Global Week of Action, looking at the toolkit for Act Now kind of a campaign. So we have several of these. And I think we need to continue to have these discussions. There is a September 24th is a Youth Global Climate Action Campaign day that has been suggested. And on behalf of GCAP, we will try to mobilize the Leave No One Behind lens of the marginalized perspective, and we try to bring this angle to all the campaigns that are going on. And I think this will have to be strengthened by the several national level domestic actors that are there. So friends, I now open, Ollie, may I ask you, we have 15 minutes. I do not know whether we're serious about the 15 minutes, whether we should close it. I know the interpreters are really on a tight time schedule. Probably I would rather that I hand it over to you to moderate this particular aspect of bringing in the concerns and tying it up. Over to you, Ollie.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. I mean, I think you've summarized things so well there. It's wonderful to have you guiding us and to have your leadership also in terms of GCAP and bringing those diverse voices that you rightly highlight. So in the spirit of what you've just highlighted, I very much just want to leave this open. It is true we have only 15 minutes because I'm afraid we will have to close on the hour. But if people would like to come in, perhaps you can use the hand raise function, or even just you can just wave when you put your camera on and we'll see you. Please feel free to come in. I see there's a question actually for GCAP from Jeff. Will GCAP have its People's Forum this year? I don't know, Paul or Ingo, if you'd like to answer on that one.
I'd request Ingo, but definitely we are having, and request Ingo to share a few words about that.
Yeah, so we are planning to have something like the People's Assembly during the UNGA. So the discussions are ongoing, and we also want to connect with you. I mean, to organize something together. So the idea for this year is to have really some big virtual event, more like an online demonstration in a way. So one focus are the people's vaccines, but then also other topics relevant, like climate justice and the voices of the marginalized. So the format is not yet fully clear, so it could be also a combination of People's Assembly with bringing these voices together, and then a moment when we all act together virtually. So it would be actually great if we could find a online mobilization where many or all of us hopefully could somehow mobilize together to have a real voice during the UNGA. So because, I mean, it's great to see in the Global Week of Action, there's so many decentralized actions. I think that's a big success and a strong point for sustainable development. Still, if we could find an action, a virtual action where we could raise our voices together, that would be great. Yeah, so there will be a process and we will try to invite all of you to be involved in it.
Great point, Ingo, and thanks for reminding us that idea of having a kind of unifying action that we can all take, whether it's in the past you had the stand up and speak out action, whether there's something we can do virtually, as you say. I know that the hashtags that we're using, both Turn It Around and now also Great Recovery, also help us to link what's happening in the digital space. But I think, as you say, if we can have a couple of specific actions that people can then take using those hashtags, makes a lot of sense. I see we do have a hand raised from Jonita Potsane. Over to you, please. Please go ahead. I think you've unmuted, but we're not hearing your sound.
Ollie, did you talk to me or someone else?
Did I pronounce it correctly? Sorry, Jonita. Is it Jonita, please?
No. This is Leah.
I see that there is a name with a hand raised, Jonita Potsane, but we're not hearing your voice, I'm afraid. Perhaps you can put it in the chat if you have a question or a thought. And if there are others who would like to come in.
Yes, I can take over.
Mark,
so there was a day in the spring where we had this action campaign in Bonn. There was a huge platform, which I think was still in the picture you had. So this was a quite amazing platform. We could use this for later on. And I think in Germany, it's really the day where you can do something for climate change, because it's so catastrophic at the moment here. Nobody can say, no, it's not happening. And really, everybody, my father is 80, and nobody has ever seen before what we saw 2 days ago. So it's time to act, and maybe it's a good way to get local people involved, as local governments or the Council of the Regions from the European Community. What we need is more people to join together our forces. It's worthless to do anything alone. You need a lot of people. And so we have to search who is with us on our side to take a next step for a better future for humanity.
Thank you, Mark. And yeah, we recognize that there's been a huge amount of activity there in Bonn, and it's great that you have that strong network ready to activate again over the coming months. Are there others who would like to share some views of how things are working in your own context? I don't know whether, I think there was I don't know, Rosario, you had mentioned something in the chat, I think a little bit earlier. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add.
Hi, Oli. Yeah, thank you. I was mentioning, I was following on Carmen intervention, and something that we are seeing is that while, in other regions, the recovery somehow is kind of starting, people and the process is moving forward. There are regions such as the Latin American and Caribbean region where we are still responding to COVID. And one of the main things that at least we have identified is that young people, it's at the end of the vaccination plans, at the end of the response. So that will mean that, for instance, improve young people in between 20 and 25 are going to be vaccinated if we are able to complete this schedule by the end of the year. So what does it mean? That many processes are going to start taking place, many actions such as the COP and etc. And the young people from this context are not going to be able to join. We are going to be somehow isolated. And this is in the scenario that things work perfectly and we are able to fulfill the vaccination supplies in our country. So I think that is something very important. We also need to understand that we are still responding to COVID, we are still recovering. So there needs to be a collective voice to also, keep mentioning the fact that there is still need to support. Well, regarding the 2030 agenda and so on, I think that we in the region, at least, we are not sure if we are going to be able to fulfill these goals. We are not sure if we are going to be able to advance economically, and in other different scenarios we have to go back many years. But there is still a need for more engagement, more advocacy, and also for the call from other actors to our member states, to the civil society, to keep engaging people, to keep advocating. And even though we are in an instability, constant political instability, that there is at least main goals we all want to achieve, and to focus on that. I guess that is one of the main things, or kind of like the main message at this point, because we cannot just change our plans each 2 years, even in my country, in a week, we had 3 different presidents last year. And we cannot change our plans or our common goals just because someone different gets in power. You know, we really need to consolidate these efforts and consolidate the work that we want to do, or we are wondering to do, to achieve common goals on the region and also at the national level. But I just wanted to mention that. Thank you, Oli.
Thank you so much, Rosario. And I think you absolutely identified those linkages between, you know, the health and the environment, healthy, green, and just recovery. I think that's absolutely right, that we can't do one without the other. We need to ensure that we're tackling the recovery at the same time as setting the basis for that sustainable future. So we're looking forward to working with you more in the coming months. I think we just have time for one last observation. I see Rob Wheeler, you have your hand up. Rob, over to you.
Thanks, Ollie. I was just thinking that there's all these webinars happening nowadays, and we could put out a general invitation for people that have a webinar to promote the Turn It Around campaign and the toolkit, and they could focus specifically on the issue area that they're covering with their webinar. And the other thought I had was that we have very knowledgeable people within our networks. We might create some type of a listing of people that are willing to talk about the Turn It Around campaign that would come on these webinars and give a short presentation. That's it. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, great suggestions. I see that Marina's also got her thumb up on that one. Yeah, very good point, Rob. And I think that's absolutely what we hope to do also with our regular calls. And as you say, if we can ensure that different colleagues from across the networks are able to raise this on other webinars over the coming months, that's ideal. I think also it was interesting that in the earlier session today, various people highlighted the need to connect with the media. And I think that's one of the great opportunities with the September Week of Action is actually breaking through into the media, because we know that there will be media attention around that week around what does the recovery look like. Some of the governments will be making announcements. So if we can capture that moment to actually break through into a more mainstream part of the media, then that gives us a moment to really raise awareness. Unfortunately, time really is running out, but I'm going to try one last time so that we leave no one behind. Jonita, you still have your hand raised. Can we try again with your mic? If you unmute now, let's see if we can hear you to have one last intervention. Jonita Potsane. And it's not coming through. I'm sorry about that. I'm very sorry. I know we've tried what we can, but I'm afraid we can't hear you coming through. So I just wanted to close the session by well, first of all, to highlight there's a couple of ways we can carry this conversation on. So for those of you who are still following the various proceedings in New York, today there is still what they call the high-level segment happening, which you can follow on UN Web TV, where the final ministerial declaration will be officially kind of agreed upon, and there'll also be presentations there of the Secretary General's report on the SDGs, as well as Amina Mohammed will be speaking a bit later on. And we're having our own little informal chat, which Marie-Louisa, who spoke earlier, I don't know, Marie-Louisa, if you can put your video back on. Marie-Louisa has been creating this space, which is called Wonder Me, which is a very, very informal, open space. There's no agenda. It's for the next half an hour for anyone who would like to meet. It's to replicate the idea that we might just have a coffee in between meetings. And then later on today as well, for those of you who are members of the NGO Major Group, there will be the annual meeting of the NGO Major Group as well, which is at 1 p.m. New York time, so in about 3 hours time. So thank you again to all of our great partners. This has been a huge collaboration over the last 2 weeks with CIVICUS, with GCAP, with Forus, the NGO Major Group, and from our own network, Action for Sustainable Development, and of course, many, many, many of you in different national and regional coalitions. It's been quite a roller coaster with so many different sessions on so many different time zones, and trying to make sure that different voices can be heard in the VNRs. But it doesn't stop here. Take a little break to recharge, but then hopefully we'll see you over the next coming weeks as we gear up for the September mobilizations that we've just been discussing. So, and thank you finally also to the interpreters. We're very grateful for their time. It makes a huge difference to be able to have that linguistic accessibility as well. So anyone who would like, if you just want to put your camera on so we can see each other before we go. And thank you again to everyone, and wish you a good rest of the day wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. God bless you for all. It's a great presentation.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See you in the next coffee.
Bye. Before the high-level political forum.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.